Hi, and welcome to Responsa Radio, where you ask and we answer questions of Jewish law in modern times. I'm Rabbi Avi Killip, Executive Vice President at Hadar, here with Rabbi Ethan Tucker, Rosh Yeshiva at Hadar, a center for Jewish learning and community building based in New York City. You can check us out and learn more at hadar.org. I'm excited to continue a conversation, actually, from a previous episode. Someone had written in to ask, can I go to my friend's wedding? A close friend is getting married in a church.
Yeah.
And they were trying to figure out how to reconcile their strong desire to be there for their friend with their own personal inherited practice, which was not to enter a church. So we got into a lot in that episode about the relationship between Christianity and Judaism, and you really laid out for us 3 different categories, although maybe people will mix and match between those 3, about how to think about Christianity as Jews.
Yeah.
So today's question, I think, is a different specific case that I want to share, and I'll bring the question.
Right.
But for listeners who didn't get a chance to listen to that previous episode, you might want to pause here and go back and listen to that, and then rejoin us here for today's question. Here's what the questioner writes. I converted to Judaism in 2023. I grew up in a very religious Catholic family and attended Catholic school through college. Through my upbringing, I accumulated a number of rosaries, Bibles, scapulars, bottles of holy water, and other accoutrements. When I started converting, I took all these things and I put them in a box, now in a closet at my childhood home. My family is no longer religious whatsoever and also has no use for them. I didn't want to throw all these things away because this felt disrespectful to those who believe in their sanctity and value. But I recently found this box again, and I feel uncomfortable still owning all of them. Is there a proper way to dispose of the items? Thanks for any and all insight you can provide.
Okay.
So is there a Shemot box, right? Is there a Geniza? What considerations should they have to do with this box? I so appreciate the question. I appreciate for the person who shared it. I appreciate your sharing your story with us and the uniqueness and the care that you are taking with, not to be disrespectful to these items, but also not to be disrespectful to yourself and what you're comfortable owning. Yeah. So curious, where do we start?
Yeah, let's actually just start with a Jew coming across objects that are of another religious framework, right? What are you supposed to do with them, right? What happens, okay? Let's assume for a moment, we'll come back to this, and if listeners have heard the earlier episode, they've gotten a little background here. But let's assume for right now that, at least from the perspective of a Jew, Christianity as a mode of worship is avodah zarah, is foreign worship. The objects used in it are associated with foreign worship, and they are like the Talmudic discussions around idolatry in every aspect. We'll come back and reassess in a minute, but let's assume for right now that's the case.
Okay.
What do you do when you come across idolatrous stuff?
Run screaming in the other direction.
All right. So, or maybe burn it down and destroy it and do all the things that it seems the Torah says you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right? Destroy their altars, all that stuff, right? You can open up
turn it into a bathroom.
Deuteronomy chapter 12. You'll get the very vivid description of this. Now, really interesting, Yishai Rosen Tzvi, who's a scholar of rabbinic literature and ancient Judaism, documents in really interesting ways the ways in which the biblical imperatives to go around and, as it were, blow up statues of the Buddha, right? To take an example of what happened under the Taliban like a couple decades ago in Afghanistan. That fades. Rabbinic sources are no longer focused, and they don't have the power to actively go and destroy a bunch of things. They can't walk around and see a Medusa, and get out their hammer and take it down. The rabbinic world is much more about navigating your own space.
Right, self-preservation.
Yeah, distancing, and how do you do that? So you're not controlling and zoning the public square, but you get things like the following Mishnah in Avodah Zarah, chapter 3. One who finds utensils, think bowls, other kinds of household items, and they have images on them of a sun, of the moon, of a dragon, okay? You have to take them and throw them into the Dead Sea.
Yeah.
Now, whether the Dead Sea here is like literally the Dead Sea, or it means they got to be completely put, out of any access. You clearly don't just bury them, right? They've got to be sort of thrown in a place where
dispose of them.
You completely dispose of them. And when Rabbi Yosei says in that Mishnah, well, yeah, you could also just like grind it up and then scatter it to the wind, right? The sages don't like this. They say back to him, they're like, well, then it'll become fertilizer for the field. Like you're going to still get some benefit. So you can see for them, like taking it to the Dead Sea is a way of saying no one, right, expunge this and any influence it has on the world from the world. Yeah,
I always heard that, but it'll become fertilizer, like the dust is, I heard it much more metaphorical than, you'll get benefit. I hear it as like, the ideology will seep into the next generation of thinking, the way that we're like,
interesting.
That it seems like anti-Semitism is gone, but then it resurfaces in another form. It's like, that's what fertilizer is. It just, it seeps back in and it transforms the next generation of toxic ideology. It just never leaves. It's like, we have to find a way to get rid of these ideas that is like putting them to the side, as opposed to like keeping them around and letting them resurface somehow.
Yeah. And there's a notion here that it's really kind of extreme, because all you found was like a bowl with a dragon on it. You don't even really know, like, is that dragon a form of a god? Is it being worshipped? Was it worshipped? But basically, because it might be, you cannot just bring this thing into your house and you got to destroy it. So in any event, I mean, this is sort of the closest rabbinic texts come to preserving, go out and destroy their idols. It's like you find a bowl like that, you destroy it, all right? And so on a simple level, right, if Christianity is a form of idolatry, if these are objects used in it, and you came across them, right, on some level, the simplest thing to say would be, yeah, you have to destroy them, right? Like that's actually what you would do. Again, we'll revisit that assumption.
Right. That would seem like a harsh words in response to this questioner to say like, just take them directly to the dump.
Yeah. Well, to put another way,
the incinerator.
From that frame of reference, when the questioner says something like, well, that would feel disrespectful.
It's like, that's the point.
The point is to disrespect it, right? Like if you actually have that frame on it. Again, before we revisit, I want to get to what I find, though, is a poignant text, which is not exactly our questioner, but it starts to get into the zone, which I think is amazing. So the Mishnah in Tractate Demai, which is a lot of that tractate is sort of about navigating life with your non-observant relatives.
Yeah.
That's the best way I know
I've been
to
teaching it a lot recently, actually, in the vein of just like different practices. And the idea, it feels so modern. We're like, we now live in a time where people practice differently, even in the same families. Like, nope, very, very ancient phenomenon.
It's a fantastic masechet. And it has cases like the following. A convert and an idolater who inherited from their father the idolater. So what do you have here? You had a non-Jewish idolatrous family,
right.
Okay? But then one of the kids finds Judaism, okay? So two brothers, okay? One of them has converted to Judaism in the father's lifetime, but then the father dies. Okay, very nice. This kid converted to Judaism, but like he's still coming back for dad's funeral and the division of dad's estate. What's going to happen here? And in the estate are lots of idols.
Yeah.
To modify the questioner for a minute here, there's a big box of the rosaries and other things, right? That suddenly I've inherited.
Now I own it. Yeah.
Exactly. Or it's in the estate. So here's what the Mishnah in Demai says, okay? It says the convert can say to his still Gentile, still idol-worshiping brother, you take the idols and I'll take some other stuff that's of equivalent worth.
Right.
Essentially divide the estate along appropriate theological lines.
You can say that.
You are allowed to say it, which is a little surprising, you might think, because it seems like you're enabling him to do the idol worship, right? Which he shouldn't be doing either. But you are allowed to say, yeah, we're going to divide up this estate in a way that doesn't religiously compromise me. You'll get the idols. I'll get some of the cash. They continue. It'll be like, you'll get the wine, which dad had, which I'm no longer allowed to drink because it's whatever, idolatrous wine.
Yeah.
And I'll get, the grapevines or the grains. Exactly. Okay. And then as an important caveat though, but if it already came into the possession of that converted child, they can't benefit from them. Meaning, if basically the will is still in probate and the court is figuring out how to divide it up, you can make a modification to make sure you don't get any of the idols. But if basically they divided the whole estate 50-50 and delivered it to you, you can't then barter the idols to your brother for some other stuff to get into return. So what's the difference here? It seems like the basic difference is once a Jew actually has come in possession of an idol, they have to destroy it. They can't use it as an object of worth to barter, to sell, probably can't even give it as a gift.
Can't even put it on eBay.
Right. No way. Can't do it. But if you are trying to negotiate what comes to you or not, then you can sort of, divide the estate before it's been divided. Okay. In the Talmud, they sort of wonder why do we even allow you to do that with dividing the estate? Like, I get it's not formally yours yet, but it still feels like you're facilitating a form of a transfer.
Or you could have had the opportunity to destroy it.
Yeah.
And you gave that up.
That's right. Exactly right. So Rav Papa says something really interesting, and it captures a little of the language of what is going on here sort of emotionally. They say, the rabbis basically were lenient to allow that form of estate division for fear that if they didn't allow it, the convert would revert to their idolatrous past, which is to say, if you tell me that basically, I convert to Judaism, I have to lose a significant piece of my father's estate because they're going to divide everything equally.
This is not about emotional hardship. This is about financial hardship.
Financial hardship is what Rav Papa is talking about.
The Buddha collection was actually very expensive.
And you're going to create a disincentive to people sticking with their Judaism because they're like, if I just revert, I can then inherit this thing and get the money. It is definitely a text that's only about the monetary piece, but it is giving language, I think, to the fact that actually making a transition from one set of assumptions to another, from one religious world to another, etc., is not simple. And you retain lines of connection, in this case, a monetary one, but I would extend it also to emotional ones where you feel like, how am I going to sort of wrap up my journey to where I am, but without feeling like I am, completely rejecting or feeling like I'm totally disincentivized. If you require me to make like a complete and total break here, is it going to actually in some ways push me back?
Is that too much to ask?
Yeah.
Right.
That I think is just sort of so fascinating in seeing that text. And again, I also love the text itself for just the real world data of, it's not just like, what should a Jew do with idols? It's like, well, how did the Jew come, upon the idols? What if the Jew inherited the idols? Because their father's not Jewish, which can happen. Right.
This is a good time to take a quick break. We'll get right back to this episode, but first I want to let you know about an upcoming program with Hadar that you will love. the Hadar National Shabbaton, January 30th to February 1st in East Brunswick, New Jersey. This is a Shabbat of powerful davening, engaging learning, delicious meals, and great kids programming. Come connect with an incredible network of people working together to build more meaningful Jewish lives. Visit hadar.org/Shabbaton for more information. Now let's dive back in.
That Mishnah and the way it gets ruled in the Rambam and later sources would not be helpful for the fact pattern of the questioner, where they already have taken possession of these items. The question is coming at a time of, I have these things, what do I do with them now? If we presume that they are really idolatrous objects, then the Mishnah and the later sources that codify it tell you, well, once it comes into the possession of the Jew, right, or the convert, then you're back at the rule of you got to destroy him, right? You can't do anything bad. Had you caught it beforehand and basically said, oh, I'm going to divide this up, or can you take this and give it to someone else? Yeah, you can basically not have to worry about destroying pieces of your parents' estate, but just locally, right, it actually doesn't help you. So we have to take a couple other steps here. Just, I think, also to see that this has actually been, in theory, part of the process of converting. It's useful to note one biblical sort of precedent and then one explicit Talmudic story. When Yaakov is coming back from his 20-year sojourn with Lavan off in the east and returning back to Beit El, where he had first encountered God with the dream and the ladder, he says to everyone who's with him, it's a very unusual scene, Hasiru et Elohei hanechar asher betochechem. Get rid of the foreign gods that are in your midst. And then basically all the people he's with take out all these idols and they bury him under a tree. Okay? In a way, it's taken by certain later texts as a form of conversion. Like some people see that text as proof that Yaakov was in the business of converting people. Like he picked up a bunch of people from Lavan's house and he sort of let them be with their idols, whatever. But when they're getting back to the land of Canaan, he's like, okay, guys, we're doing my religion now. Get all those idols and bury them. They're gone. There is a notion of before I go to worship the God of my ancestors in Beit El, and I invite you to it, you got to get rid of your idols. Yeah. Right? And the Talmud has a version of this story where Rabbi Baravua, one of the sages, has a couple non-Jews come to him who want to convert, and he tells them, great, go sell all your stuff, basically all your idolatrous stuff, and then convert, right? So you have this picture of, actually, because if you convert and you still own this stuff, you'll have to destroy it. Right. So right now, it's still allowed for you to sell it. Right. Go sell it so you don't lose the capital, and then I'll convert you.
There's something of throw it into the sea that feels like a ritual. And both of these stories you're bringing now, Jacob saying, bury them or sell them, is there is a ritual element almost of you're going to separate yourself from these items. Yeah. It makes me think in the context of this question that's the moment of put them into the box. It was that moment of I packed them all into the box was that was a ritual of I am separating myself from these. I am putting them to the side. Mm-hmm. And maybe where we would say, especially this last text, it is really what you should have done was get rid of them at that moment. Instead of putting them into the box and leaving them in the house, the problem is that's when you should have separated from them, when they made it into the box. That was your moment to sell the box on eBay. Now it's too late for that. That's a little bit different than destroy them because they can't exist. It's you need to do this ritual to separate yourself from the item. It's not just that the idols need to be buried. It's that you need to bury them. It's not just that they need to be sold. It's that you need to sell them.
If I were guiding this person based on the assumption that all of these objects are the accoutrement of idolatry, I would say these things have to be disposed of, right? And thrown out. But there is an important twist here, right? Which I think we have to come back to. And it relates to that earlier episode of, well, but is that really true of Christianity, of Christian objects of worship? And more to the point, which of these things are really things that were worshipped or forbidden in some way? So, a scapular is just a piece of clothing. No one's worshiping that vest. It's not actually included in the worship itself. Rosary is used for counting to keep track of saying a certain number of recitations. It's not really an object of worship. We could go through things one by one. I think the questioner probably has a better sense of this. I mean, the Bibles are definitely not an object of worship, assuming they are Bibles that have the New Testament. So then you get drawn into that question. But I'm saying there's two elements here. One is, are we even talking about items from a religion that should be treated as idolatry? And are the items themselves things that were, or used in some way that forbids them?
I guess you could make that case. It feels to me like, rosary, I don't know. That feels like a stretch to me. If you were going to say, again, as we discussed in the previous episode, if you were going to say Christianity is not idolatry, these allow Christians to observe, but that's not idolatry, then maybe I can give them away or sell them. But each individual item to me, I don't know, they feel connected, and to me, maybe the biggest indication is that the person writing the question feels that way.
Yeah. So I want to just give us a source which gives you a schema for thinking about this, and it might be left for the questioner to make some determinations about how this case fits in. Rav Eliezer Melamed, contemporary rabbinic authority in Israel, has actually been doing a lot of interesting thinking about some of the interfaith questions and how to really hold at the same time the notion that Judaism and God and Torah are supposed to be a blessing for all of humanity and find a way to engage everyone, but also kind of hold the line on certain things where we have disagreements. So he has a case, or plays out an example of a Jew who comes into possession of very costly, expensive, valuable crucifixes. Mm-hmm. Okay. And truth be told, he says in this case, person doesn't really know if people ever bowed down to this crucifix. Like, was it ever actually an object of worship? Okay. And then he says, I think you can sell that to a non-Jew. And why? Our old friend that we've sometimes talked about in different episodes on this show, the notion of a double axis of doubt in the law, the sfeika. All right. And just to review what that is, that you'll sometimes have, right, you have a debate. You have a debate all the time in various issues of Jewish law. It's the entire show. But sometimes but sometimes you have a case where there's two debates that apply to the case at hand. Okay. In each of the debates, let's say there's a stringent and a lenient position. And let's even say normally I break stringent on both cases. But you give me a case where both debates would have to come out stringently for me to be stringent. Right. Then I might say, sfeika, I have two axes of doubt that there might be no problem here. If you want to almost think about it mathematically, it's like, there's a 75% chance that it's fine, right? Only in the 25% chance of it coming up tails and tails. Right. But as long as I got one head, right, I'm good to go. So what's the sfeika here? He says, well, first of all, the Meiri might be right that Christianity isn't idolatry at all. Yeah. And this was a view we talked about in an earlier episode. One of the prominent medieval authorities, understood by many modern authorities to have said, Christianity is just a perfectly fine mode of religion. Doesn't mean Jews can accept Jesus as their Messiah, but there's no idolatry going on there, okay? Maybe that's right. And even if that's not right, maybe this crucifix was never worshipped. Yeah. in which case it's a thing made by an idolater that wasn't yet worshipped. And therefore, you can basically play both sides of the lenient possibilities there and sell the crucifix and not lose the value. Another example where this comes up, the Mishnah in another place, he cites this, says if you find a broken idol, like a shard of an idol, no problem. You can benefit from that. You could use the material, melt it back down, use the stone and something else, whatever it is. Why?
Yeah, why?
Okay, because the Talmud says, first of all, you don't know if it was ever worshipped in the first place.
Okay.
And second of all, even if it was worshipped, maybe the fact that it's broken indicates that the idolater sort of rejected it and decommissioned it from having any serious value. And in general, our principle is even something made and worshipped as an idol, if the Gentile, for instance, breaks it, right, rejects it. This, I think, is relevant in this case also, because one of the other ways that you can say an idol can be rejected is like it's abandoned. Like people abandon it in a time of peace. You see someone just basically left it, they packed it up, they don't care about it. When the questioner says, no one in my family cares about this anymore, they're not religious anymore.
Yeah.
Actually, in a certain way, like the questioner is reporting that these things have kind of been decommissioned in their family. And then I think you can combine that or that possibility also with the Meiri perspective to say, I don't need to destroy these things because these things on at least two axes can be construed as not actually having the status of anything idolatrous, either because Christianity intrinsically is not idolatrous or because these things have fallen out of use. I think, if you're going to sell it, that's one thing. If you're going to give this to a church to have active use, then you should feel a little more confident that, well, I don't think there's anything idolatrous about Christianity, and I'm happy to facilitate other people's worship with this. You could imagine taking a middle ground where you're like, I don't know that I want to be like actively, giving to the house of worship, but I also don't feel like I want to or it's appropriate to throw this out. I'll give it to someone else who might end up giving it to someone along the way.
So if the person writing the question fundamentally feels like Christianity is fine and good, it's just not for me, then really probably it is fine to like drop it off at a church door because you don't think it's idolatry.
Correct.
If you do feel, if you have that strong inclination that there was something wrong here, then actually the fact that, this person is saying, I want to be respectful to it because some people think it's sacred. Instead of like, well, some people think it's sacred, therefore I should treat it respectfully. It becomes, some people think it's sacred, therefore I should destroy it. But if like my family doesn't really care anymore, it's just, the rosary is just a necklace now, then actually I could just sort of throw it away. It doesn't matter. It's
look, there too.
I could give it away. I could put it in the Goodwill pile, like whatever.
There are ways, I think it is striking, right? The rabbinic sources talk about throwing it into the Dead Sea. The biblical source talks about burying under a tree, which is a little less aggressive and violent, right, of an act. Now, the Dead Sea is not so violent, but it's, it's more actively destroying as opposed to putting away. You can imagine burying these things also as an option. So I hope that helps clarify for the questioner. I agree with what you said earlier that actually, the instincts here were really great in this question, which was to say, I inherited this. Aren't I allowed to share it? Or how am I navigating the family dynamics? And there's some degree of that. And the rabbinic sources are very aware of that and attuned to that. And then there is a little bit of a kind of coming to the notion of what have I become? What have I taken on? What have I left? And that I have to sort of actually navigate and work through and come to a sort of coherent statement of, is this idolatrous? Is it not idolatrous? I think we've shared there's a number of pathways there. And what I always like about the Sfeika mentality and mechanism when playing off of two axes of doubt is, it allows you to sort of hold multiple frames of reference at the same time. Like, am I 100% in the tank for this is like completely fine way to worship? I don't know, like maybe, but maybe actually I converted in part because I was adopting and leaving something. I can't speak to the experience. Am I 100% in the camp of feeling like these really are problematic objects in terms of how they were used? Not really sure, but I have enough truth maybe of both of those questions that it gives me a pathway to move forward.
I think it could feel like a very lonely story, right? You could feel very much like, oh, only I have this particular upbringing and this particular journey. I hope that some of the sources that we've brought here will offer the person who wrote this question and any other listeners who resonate here to say, yeah, you're not alone in this. This is a question that Jews before you have been asking and dealt with for generations. And together you can find your way forward. Thanks.
The past can disappear over time, so let it go and hold the finer things in life.
Have a halachic question you'd like answered on the show? Email us at responsa@hadar.org. Responsa Radio is a project of the Hadar Institute. Thanks to Chana Kupetz and Jeremy Tabick for producing this podcast, and to David Khabinsky for recording and editing this episode.
In every ocean breeze.